Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hostet Learning's webinar about the Springboard KS3 Science resource. Today, we are joined by Adam Boxer, who is the series editor for Springboard and will be presenting to you today. My name is Alina Jones. I'm an associate marketing manager on the secondary team at Hostet Learning. Please be aware, as you will be already, this session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be shared with you via email at some point tomorrow. Please ensure your microphone is muted throughout this presentation until the Q&A session. You're welcome to type questions into the chat box at any point during this presentation. Please ensure to select everyone as the intended recipient in the chat box. We hope you enjoy today's webinar. Firstly, let me introduce you to Adam. He is a science teacher and lead practitioner at the Totteridge Academy in North London. He is also Education Director of Carousel Learning, an innovative online learning platform aimed at improving student retention and reducing teacher workload. Adam has delivered CPD on a national and international level and is proud to have played a part in the resurgence of evidence-based practice in science teaching. Over to you, Adam.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for that. Hello, everyone. Hi, Jonna. Hi, Lawrence. Hi, Owen. And hi, I'm not sure what your first name is, P. Mac. Could you just pop a little thing in the chat to say if you can hear me, okay? See if we can get the chat working. Just a yes or no in the chat. Check you can hear me. I've got a hand up. You can unmute. Hang on, what is going on here? Sorry. Can you just put a little message in the chat to say yes rather than a hand, just so we can check the chat works?
Chat's disabled.
Is the chat disabled? Okay, I thought that might
Yes.
be the case. Do you mind trying to pop that on?
Let's have a look if I can get chat on while we're in here. I do apologise.
That's all right.
Q&A. Okay.
Thought that might be the case. Good that I checked, isn't it?
It is a good job, Adam. I don't actually know how to enable chat because there's not an option for me to do it. Is there an option on your screen? I've got the Q&A box at the bottom and it's just
I'm
saying
gonna
if
have a
there's
look.
open, answered or dismissed. Have a look on the show chat previews. Attendees can chat with, hang on. I'll see if that has done something. I've changed it so attendees can chat with hosts and panelists now.
Oh, there we go.
There we
Yes.
go. I am sorry, guys. That's my fault. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Right, we've got it. Okay.
Great.
Right. So that's step one, which is good.
Perfect. And did P Mac have a question? You
No.
feel free to ask it aloud.
No, I think they were trying to point out that the chat didn't work. So
Oh, I see.
yeah, we're in the clear there. Amazing. Okay, lovely to have you chatting with me then. If you can pop your camera on, that would be amazing because it's much nicer for me to be able to talk to people's faces rather than a black square. So if you could pop that on, that would be really, really appreciated. Oh, thank you guys. I can see the people are coming in now. Okay, that's better. Okay, amazing. If you could put a camera on, that would be really, really lovely. It's good for me. Okay, but in the meantime, I'm going to get cracking because we've got quite a lot to cover tonight. So, hello everyone. I'm Adam. I'm a science teacher. I teach at a school in North London called the Totteridge Academy, and I've just come from school now. I was teaching my year 12 and my year 13s today. I'm also really lucky that I worked with Hachette on the Springboard Science course. And this isn't a talk necessarily about Springboard Science. This is a talk about how you embed foundational principles of cognitive science into your curriculum. We will use some Springboard stuff to illustrate specific points, but a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is just good practice, good cognitive science, and just good science teaching. So the way it's going to work is we're going to be using the chat bar quite a bit, which is why I wanted to test that it works. But we're going to be using something called a chat blast. And the way that this works is, and I'm hoping you can see my screen, okay? Because this is, okay, can you just, I tell you what, let's hope for the best, right? So first, I'm going to ask you a question, okay? and you are going to type an answer. Okay, but please, 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 please do not press enter. Okay, so you type your answer, but do not press enter. And only once I say press enter, you then press enter. So once I say, okay, and the reason for that is because I like to see all the answers appearing at once. So let's do a quick practice round. So I'm going to ask the question, you're going to type your answer, don't press enter. The simple question is, what is your name? Give you about 10 seconds. And 4, 3, 2, 1, go for it. Look at that. Okay. Hi, Owen. Hi, Rob. Hi, Patty. Fantastic. Okay, superb. Lovely. Okay, so we have the chat bar working. Fantastic. So we're going to be using this throughout the course of the session, and it'll be me asking questions and you can give answers. But also, if you have any questions yourself, you can type them in to the chat, and either I'll answer them as the talk goes on, or we'll answer them all right at the end. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a scenario, and I just want you to read the scenario and nothing else. Okay, so just have a read of that for me. Okay, what I'd like you to do now is, I think this is a pretty common scenario. Okay, so I said to you guys that I teach science. I teach science 3 days a week. 1 day a week, I work for Carousel Learning on retrieval practice and CPD. And 1 day a week, people call me up and I go visit schools and I get to go and observe lots of lessons. It's a tremendous privilege. It makes me really, really, like I learn so much. And overall, across the course of a year, I probably see, I don't know, around 200 lessons. And in a lesson that I observed on Monday, it wasn't a science lesson, but it was a very similar setup to this. And this is the kind of thing that happened. And I think in this scenario, there's something which is a big problem. Now, we're going to use the chat bar for this, and we're going to use the same process as before. So I'm going to ask the question, you just type your answer, don't press enter. I'm interested to know what you guys think. Like, what's the problem here? What's going wrong in this scenario? Just type and give yourself about 30 seconds or so. And just a reminder, if you can put your camera on, please do, because it means I can ask you to nod if you've finished, and then I'll know where people are up to. Okay, give you another 10 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, go for it. Okay, thank you, Robert. See if we're going to get any other answers. Query understanding. Yeah, really nice. Thank you, Patty. I'm just going to wait another 10 seconds, see if I get any more answers through. Okay, cool. So I really do agree with what's been said here. I think this scenario, this situation is a real problem, and I see it a lot. I see a teacher who needs to explain something, and they play a video, and it really worries me. And the reason why it worries me is because every time I watch one of these videos, and there's always something in there that goes beyond your curriculum, or that is distracting, or is too difficult. So, for example, here, this phrase, they have a fixed volume. Okay, do the students know what this means? Well, I don't know. This to me sounds like a pretty tough term that students might not know. They might, but many of them won't. The idea of a fixed volume and will require huge pressure in order to do so. It then talks about how gases can be compressed and that this is how fridges work. Like, this is true, but are we explaining this? Does it go beyond the spec? Is it possible for the students to understand what's going on here? The idea of then being able to use huge pressure actually does confuse the message. And I'm reasonably confident that if we ask students after this, can liquids be compressed? They'd say yes, just with huge pressure, if they even understood what pressure was. Do I know that they know what pressure means? And the problem is with a lot of these videos is that they're not designed for classroom use. Someone made them on YouTube to try and explain something or whatever, but they're not designed by the teacher for this class. They often go beyond the spec. The sequencing can often be really all over the place. They use terminology that students don't understand. They use glitzy graphics and lots of music. And what I did in preparation for this session is I went online and I literally just searched states of matter video for children. And I watched like 9 or 10 of them. I invite you to do this as well. And I just counted the number of things that I wouldn't want my year sevens to know or to worry about. And it was like the whole way through, right? The music, the graphics, the pictures, they tell these weird stories, and there's all sorts of terminology that the students simply cannot follow. Now, there are some things that you do need videos for. So if there are things that you need to show students that you can't like demonstrate or do yourself or explain yourself, you want to show students, I don't know, like what a storm looks like, or the video of someone dropping a hammer and a feather on the moon or something like that. You can't demonstrate that yourself, right? So you have to show them something. And I think that's absolutely fine. But when you're trying to explain a concept, I don't think it's a good route. And I think what I see happening a lot is teachers running into trouble. And I see the same thing when in a lot of schools that the way that science lessons are built is via PowerPoint. That you have a PowerPoint that's just going to put the information in front of the students and we might talk it through. And me personally, and some of you may know this already, but I normally advocate an approach that's much more freehand, that uses something like what I've got here, where you start with something, you ask people questions on the thing, and then you annotate, you label, you build, and you draw diagrams yourself live. Now, obviously, doing this can be quite difficult. It's not a straightforward thing to do. But I'm pretty confident that most science teachers in the country can execute it. And what we try to do in Springboard is we try to give people guidance with something like this. So I'll give you a second to read this. And when you're done reading it, just press the word done in the chat. That would be good if you could just press the word done in the chat. Not press, type. Type the word done in the chat. Hi, Eva. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you again. Thanks, Patty. I'll just wait another 20 seconds or so. If you're finished reading, just press done. Just type done for me. Thanks, Owen. Thanks, Eva. So what we're trying to do here, and again, like I said at the outset, you don't have to use Springboard for this, right? So I don't use Springboard, like I told you I was teaching year 13 and year 12 today. So I don't use Springboard for that because there isn't Springboard for that. But I have a book, right? I have an exercise book in which I've put all of my diagrams, all of my explanations, all of my sequences, and I just have that next to me during the lesson. And I go blank canvas like you're seeing right now. I have a OneNote and I just write into my OneNote, and it's free and it's organic. And it means that I can respond to my students as their knowledge grows, and I'm in complete control of the content. It means there's never going to be something that I introduce to students that I didn't intend to introduce to them. There's not going to be any terminology introduced to them that I didn't intend to introduce to them. And I can check at every single level if they're understanding exactly what I'm saying. And what I like to do is I like to build up a kind of cycle, a scheme, which we can start perhaps with a quality explanation. Okay. And when I say a quality explanation, it has to have specific characteristics. So for example, I like to use, like I said, a blank canvas. I like to make sure that it's sequenced. I like to make sure that there are no redundancies. So nothing additional that I don't need to have in my explanation. And I don't have anything that's going to distract my students, distractions, and I only have appropriate terminology. Okay, so things that I know that my students know, and if there are words that they don't know, I'll introduce them properly myself. And I think like an explanation, a good explanation is the beating heart of a good lesson. Okay, and it upsets me when I see people outsourcing their explanation to PowerPoint or to YouTube or something like that, just because I think the teacher could probably have done it better themselves. Let's look at another scenario now. Okay, have a read of this one. I think, like before, there's another big problem with this scenario. I'll give you about 20 seconds. Could you type your answer into the box for me? What do you think is the big problem with this scenario? Don't press enter until I say. And 3, 2, 1, go for it. Yeah, excellent. Really good. Yeah. So the problem here is with this question. And I hear variations on this the whole time. People say things like, anyone got any questions? Or does everyone understand that? Or everyone got that? Thumbs up type stuff. And the problem is, it's not that people are lying, right? Like if a student nods their head or they say, yes, I understand that, or they say they don't have any questions. It's not that they're lying. You don't know what you don't know. And if you don't actually ask them questions, you've got no idea if they really understand or not. Now, there is some research base on this, but to tell you the truth, I actually have my own evidence. So what I do is I go into a lesson and I wait for a teacher to do something like this. And then I'll just go to a student and I'll just ask them simple questions about the thing the teacher just said. I will check their understanding. And in 9 times out of 10, they will not be able to answer those questions. The teacher then thinks that the students get this, when in reality, the students don't get it at all. And this question, anyone got any questions or has everyone got that? It doesn't help move our understanding of the class further. I'm going to show you another scenario now, okay? Just have a read of this one for me. So in this case, we do have the teacher asking very specific questions. And in the chat, Owen said it's a closed question. I don't have a problem with closed or open questions. These are good questions. Students need to be able to answer these particular questions. Let's not get into that distinction for the minute. I'm more interested right now is that I think there's still a big problem with what's going on over here. So it's definitely the case that the teacher has asked questions, but we still have a problem. I'll give you another 20 seconds or so to tell me what you think that problem might be. And 4, 3, 2, 1, go for it. Yeah, really good. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, okay, so we've asked questions, but we've asked questions to just 2 students. Now, we could keep going and ask more and more students, but that would be tremendously inefficient. And the truth is, there is no substitute in this case for just cracking out the mini whiteboards. In this situation, both of these questions could happily be asked on a mini whiteboard. And then you'd be moving from 1 or 2 answers up to 30. You are essentially multiplying the data you're getting on your class 30 times. There is nothing in educational research ever in the history of education research that improves anything by 30 times. The mini whiteboard allows you to do something that nothing else does, which is look out at a class and instead of getting one answer, get 30. We can therefore go back to what we've got over here. And what I would add is that following our explanation, we need to check understanding. And there's a lot of really, really important characteristics of a good check for understanding. The first is that we reject self-report, which is what we spoke about before. Asking students whether they understand is not going to help us. The second is to get, oh, sorry, I spelled that wrong, is to get whole class data. And the best way to do that is by using mini whiteboards. There are some other routes sometimes that people have, like thumbs up, thumbs down, or putting numbers on a hand for multiple choice, but I don't find these to be as effective. I think that students can look at each other and copy too easily, but it also means that they're not actually verbalizing, they're not actually doing the thing you want them to do, right? I don't want students to just be able to identify the correct answer. I want them to be able to give me, to write down or to say out the correct answer. We also have to make sure that our checks for understanding are really thorough. And that's another problem with the scenario that we looked at. He only asked 2 questions. So sure, one problem is that they only go to 1 student each. But the other problem is that it's not thorough enough. We've only asked 2 students, right? We have to really be exhaustive in our checks for understanding. And we have to really try and outline the whole spectrum of the things that we need students to know. And it's at this point that I'm actually going to add another bit that even comes before the explanation. Before you engage in your explanation, it's worth doing a check then. Let's say I'm teaching my students about compression and whether or not solids, liquids, gases can be compressed. Okay, well, what if I go into the explanation as a whole bunch of students that aren't really familiar with the particle diagrams for solids, liquids, gases? Or maybe they are, but they don't know what it is between the particles. So a common misconception that students have is that between the particles in a gas in that diagram is air, right? Common misconception. But if they think that, I'm just going to then confuse them when I talk about compressing the substance. And the same is true even if you go back to that video example. So I wanted to use the term fixed volume maybe in my explanation. Well, maybe that's what I need to check. I need to check that my students know the term fixed volume. We call this a prior or prerequisite knowledge check. And it's about making sure that students know the things that they need to know to be able to access the explanation. So your explanation is important, sure. Your check for understanding afterwards, also important. But it's also always wise to do a check for understanding before your explanation so that you know that all of your students are ready. Your prior knowledge check, as with your check for understanding, has to be, you have to actually ask questions. So don't just like remind students. Don't say things like, oh, last lesson we learned about solids, liquids, and gases, and we saw that gases had spaces in between the particles. You have to ask them specific questions. And again, everything is the same, rejecting the self-report, getting whole class data, being thorough. I think sometimes for a prior knowledge check, we can be a bit lighter than a check for understanding afterwards. Because what you're trying to do is you're not trying to make sure that students like really, 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 really get it. What you're trying to do is you'll check that they get it enough so that they can access the explanation. But we definitely, and I'm just to emphasize it, we definitely 100% want to be using our mini whiteboards for that. Cool. Let's press on. Sorry, no, I don't want to press on because I need to show you what that looks like, right? Because you can't just make this stuff up. Okay, you can't just like do it on the hoof and hope that your check for understanding is just going to work out. You have to plan it and you have to think it through. And again, we do this in Springboard like this. So have a read of those questions. So here what we've got is specific instructions. So to use mini whiteboards, interesting phrase over here, asks questions like the ones below. Why? Because these questions are not exhaustive, right? You also have to be ready. Okay, so what happens if my students can't answer these questions? What do I do next? Right, this is a good list to start with, but by definition, it's the floor and not the ceiling. Okay, so there's a lot of good questions there, but it's the floor, not the ceiling. So one thing that we're going to have to add to this diagram is that our check for understanding is properly planned so that we have enough questions. Sorry, I'm confusing myself. Properly planned so that we have enough questions to really test the boundaries of this concept. Okay, I'm going to pause there and just check. Does anyone have any questions? If you do, just pop up one of the little hands, one of the Zoom magic hands. If you've got one, just put it up. Okay, beautiful. Let's go to the next scenario then. Okay, have a read for me of this one. So once again, as is now our tradition, we have a big problem with this one over here. I'll give you about 20 seconds. What do you think the problem is? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go for it. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so there's a lot of boxes that have been ticked here, right? So he's fully explained it, which to me indicates we've done the blank canvas. We haven't just relied on a PowerPoint. We haven't offset. We haven't offloaded. So I'm just going to close this for a second. We haven't outsourced or offloaded our explanation to some kind of YouTube. We've also got a check for understanding using mini whiteboards, which makes me a very happy bunny because using the mini whiteboards is definitely the best way to check. And we're satisfied that the students understand it, so we move on to the next topic. And the problem is that in this space here, we have to have this independent practice. We have to have some kind of opportunity for students to do that practice. And what I like is that Robert has put here as well that the independent practice helps embed the idea. It's really, really critical that it helps to embed that idea. Again, when I see science lessons, I often see some kind of independent practice, but the problems that I see with it are normally problems to do with volume, that there isn't enough of it, problems to do with challenge as well. So I see a lot of things like I see a lot of like close activities and like label a diagram stuff. And I'm not saying those are bad, but what I'm saying is that they're not challenging enough. And we need to push students to be really, really thinking hard. There's some other problems as well that I'll get to in a second. But before I get to that, what I want to do is I want to show you again what a practice set that I would give my students would look like. So have a read of, hopefully you can see both of those. This is question 97, 98, and 99. Just have a read of those and write done when you're finished. Okay, brilliant. Now, I guess the thing that I'm interested in is what jumps out at you about these questions? There's a very specific, well, there's quite a bit, but there's some very specific thinking that's gone into their design. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds, and what I'd like you to do is type into the box. I'll give you about 20 seconds. What jumps out at you when you look at and think about these questions in particular? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go for it. Okay, cool. Patty, I don't think they're too explicit. I think they're okay. but I think we'll get to what you're talking about in a second. Okay, so Robert's put granular sequence to build up. So yeah, I agree with a lot of those points. So for me, there's a few things that are really interesting here. The first thing that's really interesting is that this graph itself is is a bit weird. This graph is not the way that people normally draw distance time graphs. Distance time graphs normally look something like this. But Tom Millichap, who wrote this question, he got really frustrated because a lot of his students had a misconception, which is that distance and time has to start at zero. And he's like, it doesn't have to start at zero. There's no reason that it has to start at zero. And if you want to draw, multiple objects, for example, let's say you've got one object starting at one place and another object starts at another place, and you want to draw that onto one graph. You can't do that if you think that things have to start at zero. So he wanted to build in specific questions where it didn't start at zero to combat that misconception. When we then look at the questions themselves, they are absolutely 100%, they're pretty granular and broken down. And it might be at one point that we stop doing that. So instead of breaking it down point by point by point, like Patty's saying, it might be a bit further down the line, we'd increase the challenge by saying something, here's a distance time graph, calculate the speed. So without doing the steps in between. So I think that's a really, really good observation, but that would probably come a bit later on. They are also they're quite thorough in terms of their coverage of this particular concept. It's also question 97, right? This is question 97 from just one topic out of three, which means that we have loads and loads and loads of practice. One of the things we said about independent practice and the problems we have with it is that there's not enough volume. It's impossible to look at this, even just to see, oh, this is question 97, and think there's not enough volume of practice. And this comes from the Springboard practice book, where there are literally thousands of questions to ask students. And I remember that, early in my career when I was setting students practice like from a textbook, they'd have a double spread. The double spread would be about the whatever topic it was, and then in the bottom corner there'd be three questions. And the first question would be like a straight comprehension from the text and like a fill in the blank. The second question would be a sentence answer, and the third question would be a 6 marker straight away. Like it's just not a good way to design independent practice. It doesn't work. It's not effective. So we have 97, 98, 99 questions. We have 150 to 200 questions per topic. And then interestingly, when we start looking at this one, we see something very interesting. We see questions now about energy. The first unit in this course, physics, is energy. The second is speed. But what traditionally happens when you teach science is you teach topic A, topic B, topic C, topic D, topic E, topic F, and topic G. At the end of topic A, you have a test on A. At the end of topic B, you have a test on B. At the end of topic C, you have a test on C, and so on. And then at the end of the year, you have an end of year exam that covers everything. But the problem is there's stuff from here that also comes up here that students haven't seen at any point after here. So students see it in September and then never think about it again. And then comes along the test, bam, it's right there. But I don't know what to do. So what we do here is what we call interleaving, where you blend those topics together to ensure that students are regularly seeing it. And it's got two amazing benefits. The first benefit is that it just gives them, it revisits the topic and strengthens memory. That's point one. But point two is it starts helping them see connections. It starts helping them think about the links between the different topics that they're studying and not thinking about science as like separated into these silos. Oh, we learn energy and then we learn forces, and these two have nothing to do with each other. And then we learn magnets or electricity, and none of these things have anything to do with each other. We want students to appreciate. Part of the joy of the subject is understanding the links, the relationships, the associations between the different topics. And we then finally, so down here, for example, I hope, Patty, this answers your question. This is quite a spicy question, right? Yeah, it's quite a complex calculation. Okay, it involves multiple steps in the calculation. It involves unit conversions. It involves equations. There's a spicy question. So the idea is that you start with your kind of straightforward bite-sized pieces in terms of your questions, and you build up in terms of challenge. So when we go back to our list now, I tell you what, let's just add it to our diagram. Because what we've got to have is independent practice, and then of course going over it as well, which is your review. Okay. And what are the characteristics of independent practice? Good independent practice, it's got to be voluminous, so there's got to be loads of it. It's got to be interleaved, and it's got to carefully escalate or increase in challenge, so that students are constantly kept thinking throughout the question set. Once we're done with that, we're now ready to move on to our next topic and to do a prior knowledge check for that. There are two bits, sorry, just make that arrow a little bit nicer. There are two things that are missing from this cycle. The first one is what to do if it doesn't work. So let's say I do my prior knowledge check and students don't get it and they're not ready to move on. Or let's say I do my check for understanding and my students don't get it. Or let's say they do independent practice and whilst I'm reviewing or whilst I'm circulating, I notice that there's a problem. So in each of those cases, I need to do the same thing, which is reteach. And I always need to be ready to reteach. I always need to be ready to say, okay, what do I do if they don't understand? That has to be a part of my planning. And once I've retaught, I go back to my check for understanding. So whatever it is that I've had to reteach, even if the students are doing independent practice and they got really stuck on the energy question. So I've called them all back. I've said, okay, guys, pens down, eyes up here. I'm going to have to reteach the energy thing. And I redo that. I 100%, I cannot just say to them, right, everyone got that? Carry on now. I have to then check understanding. We have to crack out the mini whiteboards again. And I have to check that students understand exactly what I'm talking about before I can move on. Cool. I'm going to pause for breath there. Does anyone have any questions? Remember, you can do the Zoom hand or you can just pop it in the chat bar. Okay, super. Looking clean. Let me show you another scenario. Have a read of this for me. Okay, what I want you to do in the chat is I want you to tell me if this scenario to you feels familiar or unfamiliar. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go for it. Thank you for your honesty, Robert. Patty, thank you for your honesty. Yeah. Yeah, to me, this is like hyper familiar. Okay, I really, really feel this. And it's really frustrating because there's so much that Adam has done well here, right? We've got the expert explanations, we've got the checks for understanding, we've got extensive independent practice. And by the way, yeah, I know this is like a blunt thing to say, but this is categorically not happening in 90% of science classrooms in this country, right? At least one, normally more of those things is missing. Right, so either we've got no prior knowledge checks, or we've got explanations that's just like outsourced to YouTube or some PowerPoint that's dry and interesting and difficult to follow, or we don't have a good check for understanding, or we don't have many whiteboards in play, or we don't have enough independent practice. Like that is what's happening in 90% of classrooms. So Adam's done really, really well here, but clearly it's not enough. And the reason why it's not enough is because of a simple fact about human cognition, which is that and you'll have seen a graph like this before, that as time goes on, memory just fades and dies unless we regularly revisit through asking students questions. Reminding them is never going to be good enough. We have to ask them specific questions. Now, all of this, interestingly, is like about teaching almost. But this problem now is more tied to curriculum, and it's more tied to like the long term. This here is this cycle almost is very, very short term. It's about in the moment. I need to teach students about compression of gases. What do I need to check before I can start my explanation? How am I going to design and execute my explanation? How am I going to check their understanding? And what questions am I going to give them so that they can practice? That's happening like right now, in the moment, in the minute. The memory thing is happening over the long term. It's happening over time. And I need to think about it in a slightly different way. So what we did at Springboard is first we turned all of the content into a series of questions and answers that look like this. And I'll give you a second to just read through them. And again, you don't have to have Springboard to be able to do this. You don't have to have Springboard to say, right, well, what is the stuff that I want students to learn? How am I going to turn that into a series of questions and answers? We call them just core questions, and we've got diagrams. You can do diagrams as well like that. Sorry, I shouldn't be moving. You can do diagrams as well like that. We call them core questions. And the idea is that they are granular, which is a good word someone used earlier. So that means they're like bite-sized, okay? They're highly specific. So I'll give you a good example, okay? If you think about specialized cells that we traditionally teach in Key Stage 3, red blood cell, nerve cell, sperm cell, palisade cell, all of those, different types of cell, none of them are mentioned in the Key Stage 3 national curriculum in any detail at all. I think it mentions sperm and egg, and that's it. But it doesn't mention their adaptations, doesn't mention, I think it's got their function, but it doesn't have muscle cell, doesn't have nerve cell, doesn't have epithelial cell, doesn't have any of the cells that are traditionally taught in Key Stage 3 science. So the idea of being highly specific is saying, right, well, it's not really good enough for me to just say to my colleagues, oh, we're going to teach about specialized cells. It's not even good enough for me to say we're going to teach about muscle cells. I have to say, what is it about muscle cells that we're going to be teaching? What is it about nerve cells that we're going to be teaching? So it's highly specific. They're also well sequenced. We think through really carefully, like what are the questions that we are going to ask and in what order? Which one comes first? And that obviously relates to the teaching cycle. Which topic do I want to teach first? Which topic do I want to teach second? Etc., etc. And finally, by posing them as questions rather than statements or definitions, they are perfect for retrieval quizzing. They're perfect for students to be able to be quizzed on them. And that's the thing that's going to strengthen their memory over the long term. Now, how we do this, broadly, 3 different routes. Okay, 3 different routes. First, you've got your kind of formal questioning in class. Okay, you can just ask students questions from them. Second, you could do something like look, cover, write, check. And what I tend to do with my Key Stage 3 classes is they just get into a habit of, if they've finished a particular question set from the exercise book. So I give them independent practice and I say, do questions 97 through 101. As soon as they're done, they open up their knowledge book, which has all of these questions in it, and they get a mini whiteboard out and they just go and look, cover, write, check. Again, you don't need a Springboard knowledge book to do that. Whatever your course, whatever your curriculum, whatever you've got, you can turn that into questions and answers and have students testing themselves on that. And the third is through using an online learning platform like Carousel Learning. And the way that I use that is I take all of the questions, they're bunged into Carousel, and I can present them to students like this. So this is how all of my lessons at Key Stage 3 start. So this is like my do now, or my lesson start. And I can do that with traditional questions that look like this. I can do it with calculations questions that looks like this as well. I'll just leave that for a second so we can have a quick look. Now, interestingly, what I do, and all of the Springboard questions are available within Carousel Learning, what I also have are these lovely sliders over here. So students will sit and answer the questions, and I will then, at the end, we'll go over them one by one, and I say, right, hands up if you got question 1 correct. And if everybody got it, I just turn this slide to there, and I say, hands up if you got question 2 correct. And if only 70% of them got it, I put it to over there. And if only 10% or 100%, whatever it is for each question. And what that does is it brings it back. So it means that Carousel now knows that students suck at this particular question. Or there might be a question that Carousel knows I haven't shown students in a while. And it will bring me those questions and it will suggest to me, maybe this is a good question to ask now, maybe this is a good question to ask now, so that I know that I'm asking the right questions at the right time. And I can also embed those into homework. So students will get those as flashcards and then answer questions based on the exact same curriculum. Now, when we go back to this, what that means is that this cycle that I've shown you is tremendously powerful. And like I said, I don't think this cycle is present in enough science classrooms in this country. It's tremendously powerful. It's simple in the sense that it's just got 4 things, right? Your prior knowledge check, your explanation check for understanding, independent practice, and review. It's complex in that each of those things has multiple moving parts and isn't straightforward to get through or to execute well. So there's a simplicity and a complexity to it. In a sense, there's a sufficiency and an insufficiency as well. So it's got a simplicity and a complexity, but it's also got a sufficiency and an insufficiency. The sufficiency is that if there is one thing you want students to understand, this cycle works. If you want students to understand whether solids, liquids, gases can be compressed and why, this cycle works. Check their knowledge first, deliver a beautiful, live, organic, blank canvas explanation, check their understanding afterwards, loads of independent practice and review, and always ready to reteach if you need to. So in a sense, it's sufficient, but in a sense, it is completely insufficient as well. Because if you are not regularly reviewing, revisiting, and retrieving the exact same concepts and content, students will just forget it over time. So what I'd like to do is alongside it, put like a wavy arrow like this that says regular retrieval and quizzing over time. And that should be in both homework and classwork. And critically, this is the really, really important bit. You cannot do this ad hoc because you'll forget, right? It's impossible to keep track of stuff if you don't have a systematic program around this. And that's why I think schools, departments, teachers maybe even, should have a long-term memory strategy where you think across the course of a year, how am I going to make sure that my students' long-term memory is being looked after? We can get seduced by the lesson. We get seduced by the lesson plan, the individual unit of teaching. But overall, it's the wrong thing to be looking at. Overall, we need to be looking at what is our program of long-term memory over time and how am I strategizing and making sure that my students don't forget all of this stuff. So I'll pause in a second for questions, but broadly, that's kind of what I wanted to show you overall. And I think all of this, it would be remiss of me to say, but like all of this is made easier by using something like Springboard Science, because we've done so much of the heavy lifting for you. And the long-term memory strategy, all of that again is made easier by using either Hachette's online program Boost or by using something like Carousel Learning, because those are things that do the heavy lifting and they help you to strategize so that your time isn't spent, working out exactly when and how and what content and blah, 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 but your time can be spent responding, teaching, and adapting to the students that are in front of you. So just by way of reminder, because I didn't get a chance to do this properly at the beginning, you can grab me Anytime, if you want to drop me an email, you can email me here if you have any questions at all. I do have a podcast that you might like. It's light-hearted, it's a bit jokey. It's called They Behave for Me, so you might enjoy that too. And if you enjoyed, if you think about that approach to teaching overall, I wrote it all up in a book called Teaching Secondary Science: A Complete Guide, which is published by Hachette as well. So you can grab that too if you like it. But in the meantime, I'm going to stop talking there, and I'm just going to pause and wait to see if anyone has any questions. You can you can type it, you can put a hand up. There's few enough of us that if you want to put a hand up and just speak it out, that'd be good. Oh, thank you, but that's so kind. Wish it was available in Swedish. Ja. Did I do that right? Hopefully. Why didn't you translate it, Eva? Go for it. Okay, good. Thank you, Patty. Food for thought. I'm really glad to hear. Okay, thanks, Judy. Okay, looks like we don't have any questions. So, Eleanor, I'm going to pass over to you then to round it off. And I'll, of course, hang around because sometimes people like to wait for it to properly finish before they ask the question. Owen's asked us a Key Stage 4 version. Not at the moment. If you do want a Key Stage 4 version, all I can ever say to you is email the Hachette team and say, this is a thing that I want. And then, who knows? Who knows?
Great. Well, thank you so much, Adam. That was a great session, and thank you all for joining us today, for your time and for your questions. We hope you enjoyed it. A quick reminder that a link to this recording will be shared with you via email tomorrow. And feel free to respond with any feedback that you may have from today. Thank you all so much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll hang on because Robert's got a good question here.
Oh,
It's definitely improved. Oh, not a question. It's improved our TNL and tightness of the curriculum. You know what, Robert? I'm really glad to hear that. Do you know what you should do? You should email that in so that the team at Hachette can use that as marketing and get more people involved as well. You're a star. Thank you, Robert.
yes, please do. I will put my email in the chat as well in case any of you wish to get in touch or remarketing. There we go.
Cool. Looks like that might be it then.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys so much. Oh, thank you, and that's really kind. Okay, be well, guys. Have a good evening. I'll stay just in case anyone has any questions because sometimes people do like to stay.